Plenty of hero shooters and MOBAs allow players to pick characters that fit their playstyle. While these characters often come with specialties, they usually aren't niche. For Rainbow Six Siege, Ubisoft decided to go the opposite direction and craft characters with gadgets and ability that excel in or counter unique scenarios. Siege's operators are carefully balanced for offense and defense, each with strategies the community is using. So, what would happen if they switched? First, I want to establish a few ground rules. Operators are only bringing their unique gadgets and weapons with them. They'll be swapping ordnance options, along with drones and reinforcements staying to the appropriate side, unless that's the operator's gadget, such as Castle or Twitch.
So Twitch now has reinforcements, Castle has drones, and Mozzie's gadget is now essentially useless.
With offense on the defensive and defense on the attack, many playstyles would simply not work. Tajanka has a hard enough time lugging his turret around to a defensible position, so I can't really picture him finding a good angle to push from a stationary spot. But some operators would work practically the same when swapped. Calling attackers with Dokkaebi has potential to be rather powerful when used at the right time, after all. I can't cover everybody, but these operators would have the biggest impact on Rainbow Six Siege if they switched teams. Also, I'll mention some operators who would make an improved version of their counterparts if swapped out. You'll understand.
Nook. A million jokes have already been made that Nook is the love child of Cav and Vigil. Her Hell is basically a combination of both of their abilities. Vigil's intelligence denying with Caviera's quiet steps makes Nook a terrifying hunter, and splitting Nook's abilities between two operators would weaken the now attacking front. The only downside to Nook on the defensive would be her inability to interrogate her targets. On the other hand though, Cav's interrogation, if pulled off, would be like a Jackal times 10.
Or 5 rather, to be exact, spotting the entire defending team.
Given most would probably be bunkered up, but
God help that lone roamer.
Anyway, we all know how deadly Nook would be, so let's move on to one you might not expect.
Mira. At first glance, you might not expect Mira's black mirrors to be attacker friendly, and you definitely wouldn't want to be her trying to repel with 2 of those strapped to her back. But Mira offers a unique form of intel gathering that blends Thermite, Hibana, and a little Maverick into one package. With her black mirrors, Mira could offer a way to view into a fortified area without risk of being shot back, like a kid staring into an aquarium. At any point, she can decide to make a Hibana-like window into the enemy's territory while also still being surrounded by bulletproof reinforcement. She doesn't get to safely launch her device from afar like Hibana though. Having a long setup time would make for a good risk-reward that could intimidate the defending team. You can't ignore a Mira window because you can't be sure if someone is watching you from the other side, studying your rotations, learning your every move, waiting for the time to— oh yeah, no, she actually left like a long time ago, but you don't know that. Meanwhile, having Hibana and Maverick on the defending team would be somewhat useful, but lackluster. Peepholes can be very powerful, but typically a shotgun or a pistol will do the trick. The lack of intelligence gathering without risk of being used against you sucks. Thermite would probably not even work on defense because you often don't typically need a big f***ing hole in your own reinforcements. If you wanted a door, an impact grenade really would have sufficed Thermite. Talk about overkill. Pulse. Still, Pulse would have the potential to be absolutely overpowered on attack. Pulse's cardiac scanner allows him to spot players through walls, making him an excellent roamer on defense. Taking out sneaky flankers or spotting an enemy team from an often secluded and secure spot is most excellent. But when he's on attack, Pulse could become the very prey he hunted. Defenders don't move nearly as much as attackers do, and many play as campers or anchors, holding an angle to lock down a hallway or room. If you want to know who's around a corner, you can drone out a location or peek a corner, but both come with risks. Meanwhile, Pulse's cardiac scanner would provide maximum intel with minimum vulnerability, potentially behind complete cover from up to 9 meters away at least. And then, if you cleared the entire map except for the final room, the impregnable bunker the defending team has built, Pulse's gadget would allow a limited preview of the occupants' locations. Knowing which corners your enemies are holding up in is valuable, and hey, knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe! IQ is in many ways Pulse's opposite. One detects man, the other machines. On defense, she would probably fare far worse, but there are still a variety of gadgets for her to spot. She could let her prey come to her. She would probably become the bane of drone users and those hoping to scout an area out before proceeding. Lion. Speaking of apex predators, Lion in defense would be just— okay, so telling defenders to stay still is powerful enough, but telling attackers to stand still? That's just downright unfair. At least when Smoke does it, he only punishes you for moving into a good size area, but not the entire map. Lion's EE1D could be disastrous to any push from the offensive team. All they can do is push anyway, but get tagged, or wait to push and lose that flash or smoke you just threw. That is, if you even have time. Mobility is one of the offense's most necessary tools at their disposal, and taking that away can mean death. Even when just knowing which direction your opponents spawn from can be incredibly useful. Though, admittedly, using one of your limited charges so early would not be cost effective. Then again, how many teammates have you had that were efficient with their gadgets? On the downside for the big boy, Lion's drone hangs out overhead when he's on the prowl, high in the sky. And even though it is invincible, it would have to stay up there, even on the fence, so the attacking team would immediately know there's a Lion on the enemy team. That is, if they didn't already know that from scanning them within the drones. Doc. Doc's stim pistol has arguably the most powerful ability in the game, reversing bullet damage. With more bullets. Technically syringes, but healing your teammates is one of the most powerful abilities in any game, so of course Doc would be helpful no matter where he goes. But I'd argue he'd even be more useful on offense than defense. On defense, you get to set up traps and obstacles that can slowly chip away at the enemy health. You make your offensive opposition as weak as possible before they can push into the objective. And while these switches mean less trap operators on defense, there would still be a few. More on those swaps later. Up until this point though, the only real way for the offensive to counter that damage is to take out traps, use ballistic shields, or get a small buffer from Finka's temporary hit points. But why boost your health when Doc's stim pistol can just fix it? Offense has a lot more room to play with, so Doc could make for some long-range healing plays. He'd also have more options when it comes to engaging the defending team. It's the difference between the attackers getting breaching charges and defenders getting impact grenades. Time. Time to plan means Doc can stay back and be more tactical when using his stims. Of course, this is all hopes and dreams and perfect scenarios that would allow you reaction time that you could actually save your teammates. Doc's fellow Frenchman Rook would be great to have as a teammate on attack for similar reasons. Reducing damage and preventing deaths is always great. The only problem is that attackers don't start in the same room like defenders do. No one would want to run all the way around the map to grab Rook's plates. I have a hard enough time ranging my teammates when they're in the same room with me. It's like herding cats, but worse. Trap operators. Specifically, this includes Kapkan, Frost, Ella, and Legion from the defense team, as well as Gridlock and Nomad from offense. I lumped them all together because we're going to talk about how all these traps would do when deployed from the other team. Nomad and Gridlock are rather new operators and sorta kinda came as defensive offense players. Gridlock spikes can be great for shutting down rotations, and Nomad helps remove the element of surprise from would-be flankers. Both can be incredibly useful, with more time to set up and can help hold an angle. Nomad's air jabs could be set up in common paths to push hesitant attackers straight into the lion's den. Meanwhile, Gridlock spikes would excel at closing off hallways or entire rooms that, unlike razor wire, would damage those who pass through. The offense would have to use a large amount of firepower or ordnance to clear the path. Really, Gridlock's kit feels kinda too perfect for defense, so cool. On the other side, we've got the previously defense operators. A few of them rely on that setup phase, and their gadgets are risky to deploy when the round has begun and nearly impossible to use during a firefight. Frost especially would have trouble laying down welcome mats to effectively catch roaming opponents, but the results could be deadly. Ella's concussive mines are easy to set up and activate, so her loadout already kind of feels like that of an attacker. Covering your backside with a quick ice cream cone would be just as viable on defense, which would increase your skill level. Instead of placing mines where enemies are likely to come from, you'd need to constantly be deciding when to deploy your mines, kind of like how Nomad plays these days. Legion has several similarities with two big exceptions. His traps regenerate and are invisible. Legion would be a super powerful anti-roamer operator, able to set up more traps than any operator in the game. Kapkan would be hard to say. His traps could also be highly effective against roamers, as they would likely also be using doorways. His setup time is longer than that of Legion and Ella, but less than that of Frost. His traps are also way more subtle, and I mean before they explode, of course. While other traps are deterrents though, Kapkan's hit for high damage and area of effect, which is more effective against attackers who are more likely to be grouped up. Still, all of these new offense operators would thrive in diffuser scenarios when the defending team has to push back home. Offense gets to play defense, and now they get to use the rest of their resources to stop them in a high-intensity burst of action. But during the slower times, you'll need to be watching for my buddy, Glass. Especially with his recent rework, Glaz is another operator that works even better on defense, to the point of being almost overpowered. Glaz's sniper rifle allows him to hold angles with alarming efficiency when wielded by accurate players, of course. That's the role he was originally meant to play. Ubisoft's recent rework was meant to combat Glaz's pushing capabilities and steer him back to being a long-range operator. We also have Warden now, whose glasses would make him an excellent Glaz alternative on attack, but that's beside the point. A sniper with nowhere to go and all the time in the world on his side could completely shut down an attack route. Hell, we've seen what simply giving a powerful submachine gun a good scope can do in this game. Dark times. Of course, I'm sure you can already see the problem with Glaz's new role. With his loadout, he would be terrifying as a spawn peeker. On maps with high elevation and large outdoor areas like Cafe and Canal, Glaz could decimate teams before they even reached the building. Fun fact, decimate actually used to mean reducing something by 10%, so I guess Glaz couldn't technically decimate offensive teams, he would annihilate them. Knowing is half the battle. For this same reason, Blackbeard would also excel on defense. He's already the king of trades, but he could be even better. High-level players know to watch for peekers on attack and may even pre-fire windows, but Blackbeard's rifle shield would save his noggin and let him still get the pick. The rest. I would love to discuss the infinite possibilities and beyonds. There are plenty of other operators, and the rest of these come down to abilities that are always, or at least moderately, useful. For example, it could always be useful to make new sightlines, so Buck, Sludge, and Sophia would be great on defense as well, but those roles don't demand them as much. Meanwhile, Jaeger's Magpies wouldn't really catch nearly as many grenades on offense, and Blitz and Ash's role of rushing the enemy team would be a bit more chaotic at the beginning of a match if they were on defense. It's not a perfect system, sure, but it's fun to imagine turning the whole game on its head to see what falls and what holds fast. Ubisoft did a great job making roles that are very niche. When a role doesn't work for the other side, it's a testament to just how balanced a character is. And of course, Monty and Clash would still just stare angrily at each other. I know this is all wishful thinking. The closest we'll ever get to this is Outbreak, when Ubisoft allowed operators from both sides to play together in both offensive and defensive objectives. And apparently we're going to be getting that as a standalone game. So, unless Ubisoft throws us a loop, we'll probably never get to see this come to pass. But maybe Ubisoft will see this video and maybe we'll get to experience this next year when April Fool's rolls around. Who knows? If you want to see more videos about your favorite global counter-terrorist organizations, subscribe to the channel. I'm always happy to talk about Siege. And I've been your host, Alpha Lance with the Leaderboard. Thanks for watching.